I consider what people tell me far less interesting than what they choose not to tell me.
Hello and welcome to our cinema show here on Arts 24. I'm joined by our film critic Emma Jones to talk about the week's new releases. Hi, Emma.
Hello.
We're starting with a film that's out today in France. It's called From the World of John Wick, Ballerina, and it's directed by Len Wiseman. Now, this follows the 4 hugely successful John Wick movies starring KeanuReeves, which have made around $3 billion at the box office, so we can definitely say successful. Emma, in your opinion, what's the thinking behind this spin-off story?
I'm sure the thinking is how to keep the John Wick story alive in some way, because you may know this is not a plot spoiler. At the end of the last John Wick instalment, that reluctant assassin who only wanted to retire in peace, well, he seemed to die at the end of it. Yes, but although since John Wick 5 is apparently in the works, I think that with James Bond, as with James Bond, you know, no successful assassin is ever allowed to be killed off. So, Ballerina stars Cuban-Spanish actress Ana de Armas as Eve. Now, she is a young woman who's adopted into an organised crime syndicate called the Ruska Roma. Now, they appeared in a previous John Wick story. So Eve goes rogue to find the man who killed her father. He's known as the Chancellor, played by Gabriel Byrne. Now, he runs a cult in a charming snow-covered alpine village. This being John Wick, what's the betting? The ice skates themselves are going to be used as a weapon.
Very resourceful.
Originally, Ballerina was going to be a pure spin-off movie, but the film is littered with familiar faces from the John Wick universe. They include Angelica Houston, Donnie Yen, Ian McShane, and of course, John Wick himself, KeanuReeves.
You're him. The one they call the Baba Yaga. The students all talk about you. How do I get out of here?
The front door is unlocked.
No, I mean, how do I start doing what you do?
Looks like you already have.
I think fans will be delighted to see KeanuReeves in this movie, although it does say a lot about whether its makers thought Ballerina could be a success without him in it, I feel. And since the film's budget was around $90 million, I believe, there's a lot riding on its success.
Yeah, no pressure there. Well, both Ana de Armas and KeanuReeves have been on the red carpet to promote Ballerina. Let's hear what Keanu had to say about his co-star's work and what it took for her to achieve all those stunts in the film.
The range of what she's done is so impressive. Comedy, action, drama, satire. I mean, she's really a remarkable actress.
Compared to other action films I did before, which definitely helped having a sense of what that was, this definitely took me to another level, and it was so hard. Months and months of preparation and training and working on the fights and the choreographies and weapons and, you know, a lot of work, but it felt very cool and empowering, and like actually to be able to pull it off was really, really awesome.
They killed my father.
So, Emma, do you think that Ballerina works as part of the larger John Wick universe?
I have to say, this is a great action movie. And Ana de Armas, you know, has already proven that she can do these action roles like in No Time to Die. She's impeccable in this film. And actually, I found her more charismatic than KeanuReeves. I know that's probably heresy to say something like that. But the only thing is, I think by the end, you know, the fighting, which is non-stop, if imaginative, gets a little bit too tedious for me. That's my only criticism. Now, there was some story, because this film has been delayed, it was made in 2023. There was some talk that there were reshoots of some scenes, but that's not the case, apparently, according to Len Wiseman, the director. He said there were additional shoots made, and he was actually in hospital at the time. So the original John Wick director, Chad Stahelski, a producer on this film, had to take the helm. Now, whatever happens, I think this film should really please fans.
And it's certainly going to do well at the box office, I'm pretty sure. Well, moving on to a film that's more cerebral than action-led, Freud's Last Session. This stars Anthony Hopkins and Matthew Good. It's directed by Matthew Brown. And Anthony Hopkins actually plays a psychoanalyst, Sigmund Freud, who meets the Christian thinker and writer C.S. Lewis, the author of the Narnia series of children's stories. Did this meeting of these great minds actually happen?
Sadly, it's as fictitious as the storyline of the two popes, which, of course, Anthony Hopkins also starred in, and it kind of reminds me a little bit of this film. It's an intense discussion of faith, as Freud was an atheist, as was C.S. Lewis before his surprise conversion to Christianity. Now, the story is adapted from a stage play, and it takes place on the day Britain declares war on Nazi Germany. Freud is in London in the final weeks of his life. He's suffering from mouth cancer, but he invites C.S. Lewis over in order to berate him over his conversion.
OK, sounds pretty friendly there. OK, let's take a look at the film.
Professor Lewis?
Yes?
Anna Freud.
Ah.
Nice to meet you.
And you?
Good luck.
Dr. Freud.
Sit, please. Not there. That's the transformation couch. You be careful. It seems to me, Professor, you've never matured enough to face the terror of being alone in the dark. So you bury your doubts. You bury your memories of the war.
Look, there's one major reason to see this in cinemas, and that's got to be Anthony Hopkins.
For
He's
sure.
87 years old. He's still got work in production, and there might be a distinctive Welsh accent coming from Hopkins, I feel, rather than a Viennese one. I'm Welsh myself. I feel I can say that. But he's still incredibly engaging, particularly in Freud's scenes with his daughter Anna, now played by Babylon Berlin star Liv Lisa Freuds. And Freud clearly has a dysfunctional relationship with his daughter. As for the rest of the film, feels a lot like a stage play, a lot of dialogue about faith, and this being Freudian sex as well. However, there is a really nice feeling of things coming full circle for Anthony Hopkins, because you may remember he's played C.S. Lewis as well in the 1993 classic Shadowlands.
Yeah, so familiar territory for him there. Well, now we're moving to a French documentary by director Chloé Barrault. It's called Fragments of a Life Loved, and it's about what Barrault's ex-lovers remember of their relationships with her. It was made possible because Barrault had been filming her life since at least the mid-1990s and has plenty of self-shot archive footage to draw on. Let's take a look.
Un soir, j'ai été suivie par elle, et puis elle m'a invitée à m'arrêter pour boire un verre, ce que j'ai fait.
Elle m'a regardé, et c'était comme un défi qu'elle me lançait.
Questo ricordo di lei che mi osserva, mi desiderava.
En fait, c'est peut-être ça qui m'agaçait, c'était le romantisme.
C'est une sensation d'ivresse. L'ivresse finit toujours mal.
Je trouve ça fou qu'elle s'autorise à demander ça, mais une fois qu'on nous le demande, c'est impossible de dire non.
Wow, certainly a bold idea, isn't it, to ask your ex-lovers what they remember about their time with you?
I certainly wouldn't, but it is quite remarkable because Barrault, who's now in her late 40s, was using a camera years before the rest of us had a smartphone. I find that absolutely fascinating. So her ex-lovers include both men and women. The film is in French and Italian. Quite a few famous interviewees in there, including director Rebecca Zlotowski. Now, what I find fascinating about the film is not so much the accounts of Barreau. You know, not all of that is flattering either, which is quite delicious. It's the era itself, because the 1990s, where a lot of this took place, was an era that if you had something to say in the matters of love, you sent a letter rather than a text. So I love looking at this era, and it's also poignant to see all these faces looking so young in the film. So it's a really fascinating exploration of lost youth, I suppose, lost love, and a lost era. You know, it really is quite a fascinating watch.
A more analogue time, perhaps. Well, finally, to the big French release of the week now. It comes from director Fabienne Godet, and it's called Le Répondeur. It stars Salif Cissé and Denis Podalides of the Comédie Française theatre troupe. Tell us more about this one.
Yes, this is based upon a 2020 novel by Luc Blainvillain about Baptiste. Now, he's played by Cissé, and he is a talented mimic, but he is unable to make a living at his art. That is, until he's hired by the famous novelist Pierre Chauzin, played by Denis Podalides, to imitate his voice and to answer his phone for him while Pierre gets on with writing his novel. Before he knows it, Baptiste is deeply involved in Pierre's life, and that's going to have predictably complicated results, as you can imagine. Now, apart from the practical question, Olivia, of who phones each other these days?
The lost art.
Anyway, you know, I do wish that this film's portrayal seemed to be more critical or more ironic of Parisian intellectual life and examine the questions of why Baptiste can't make a living at his art. I think that would be very interesting to explore. But I have to say that Salif Cissé, this is his first leading role. He's fantastic in this. The character of Baptiste that he's created is gentle, empathetic, a really good watch. It makes him really an actor to watch.
Okay, we'll be looking out for him then. Well, thanks for the tip, Emma, and thanks for the roundup this week. We'll leave you with a taste of that voicemail-inspired comedy, Le Répondeur. And do join us here every day for more arts and culture on Arts 24. We're on social media too.
J'ai commencé un nouveau livre. Et le problème, c'est ça. Je veux qu'on me foute la paix. Je veux disparaître. C'est pour ça que j'ai besoin de quelqu'un comme vous, qui se fasse passer pour moi, qui me remplace. Un imitateur.
Il est dingue quand même, ce mec, non?
Ce que vous proposez est complètement pervers.
Tu te vois, toi, faire un truc pareil?
Allô?
Je suis désolé, mais ça ne va plus être possible.